Welcome to today's meeting of the Transportation Licensing Commission. We're having a specially set meeting today. We're going to dispense with the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance for our meeting today, since we're all participating in this meeting via WebEx. Pursuant to the provisions of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that if you're not satisfied with the decision made by the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. I'm going to go through a roll call now for each of our commission members. We have Director Billy Fields with us today, and I'm going to now call on our commissioners. If you'll please respond with present or here. Mr. Carr.
Here.
Mr. McNally.
Here.
Ms. Palmer. Ms. Palmer, you're still
I'm here.
There you go. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You're welcome.
Ms. Powell.
Here.
Mr. Rogers.
I'm here.
And Ms. Warren.
Here.
Great. And Mr. Fields, we also have others on our call today. If you'll please introduce those persons for us. Mr. Fields is still muted.
I'm sorry. Teresa Costonis from Metro Legal. Tara Ladd from Metro Legal. From Metro Procurement, we have Michelle Lane, our procurement agent, and we have Terry Ray, who's with us from procurement as well. She has been our leader, manager, spiritual, whatever, trying to get us through this RFP process. So we're very fortunate to have them with us, and I think that in the commission, we're also appreciative of Ms. Gilchrist from IT helping us through this.
Great. And Mr. Fields, at this time, because we're going to be having an opportunity for the public to comment on what we're going to be covering today, if you'll please announce the phone number for that.
Actually, originally we thought that would be possible. Based on what I've been advised by Metro Legal as well as procurement, there are some specific reasons why we are unable to take public comment on this particular hearing. They could explain in detail, I think, but it's my impression and understanding it would be a issue that any contact would have to go through the procurement process and through the actual question and answer process that's set up. So I apologize. That's my error for the agenda that I got to you today. I apologize for that.
That's all right. As I mentioned at the beginning, we're conducting this meeting as a WebEx meeting through a video conference. The commission has to vote on the record that the COVID-19 pandemic requires it to hold a telephonic meeting as permitted under Governor Lee's Executive Order number 16. And we'll need to have a motion proposing that we conduct our meeting in such a fashion. If you'll, that motion also needs to state that it is electronic. It is necessary for us to meet electronically to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. Would anyone like to make a motion? If you'll please raise your hand, I'll call on you. Mr. McNally?
I would make a motion that we are allowed, that I make a motion that we proceed electronically with this meeting in the interest and necessity to protect public health, safety, and welfare because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and pursuant to the governor's executive orders and the findings of the executive orders of 16, 34, and 51.
I second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. All those in favor, I will call on you individually for you to vote since we're conducting this meeting via WebEx. Mr. Rogers.
Yes.
Mr. Carr.
Yes.
Ms. Powell.
Yes.
Ms. Warren.
Yes.
Mr. McNally.
Yes.
And Ms. Palmer.
Yes.
All right. Motion passes. We've got one item on the agenda today. Mr. Fields explained in an email to us before today's meeting that he did not have meeting minutes to circulate from the June hearing just yet, but so that we're not able to review those just now. So that really takes us to one item on our agenda today. We've got the discussion of the RFQ in regards to the shared urban mobility devices. We've set this meeting specially today so that we can review, discuss, and vote to approve or amend RFQ 61106 regarding shared urban mobility devices. And Mr. Fields, ahead of our meeting today, circulated the proposed RFQ that has been drafted. And I wanted us to have this meeting today so we could discuss the proposed RFQ and vote whether to approve or amend it. So, Mr. Fields, I didn't want to steal your thunder, but if you need to add anything else on the introduction before we begin, please.
No, sir, I don't have anything. We may, and you may already plan to do this, we may want to have if we'd like for either Ms. Costonis or Ms. Ray or Ms. Lane, for that matter, any of the three, we might want to make a comment on the process of what got us here and what is needed from the commission.
I think that would be a good idea. You know, it's been several months since substantively we've addressed this. I know we were talking about it a lot last fall, last summer, and I believe even Ms. Palmer participated in a smaller group that kind of helped formulate the RFQ. So I would like to hear from procurement and just to give us an update on where we are.
This is Michelle Hernandez Lane. I'm going to yield to Ms. Ray. Ms. Ray has been working collaboratively with Mr. Fields as well as with Attorney Costonis to develop the solicitation. So I'd like to yield to her to talk through that process for you and to explain the various elements and nuances of the process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. This is Terry Ray, and I'm the procurement officer working this particular project. Currently, there is a solicitation on the street, which y'all are able to view. We were unable to allow you to see it beforehand because it's confidential. And in order for you to be able to view it and to approve it, this is the best alternative method that we could seek. It is active. We have received some questions from vendors, and vendors can submit their questions through the online discussion portal within the solicitation, just as Mr. Fields has stated. So that would be where their comments need to go. In reference to that, I did have one public citizen that has submitted questions, and I'm going to include those questions and responses back. But the purpose of this is for you to review and notify me of any changes in the vote. And Ms. Costonis, you can weigh in as well, and to vote on the solicitation as required by what council has approved. And we would make an amendment to the solicitation to amend anything that was recommended and approved by the commission.
Yeah, this is Teresa Costonis. I would agree with what Terry just said, and would just add that the reason the Transportation Licensing Commission is involved in this competitive solicitation is because of Council Ordinance BL 2019-109. And in that ordinance, the council delegated to the Transportation Licensing Commission to conduct an RFP process. Normally, it is our purchasing department that has the kind of experience and procedures in place to conduct a competitive solicitation. So some time ago, Billy may remember when exactly, the TLC wisely drafted purchasing to assist in conducting that process. And so this RFP is the result. And as Terry mentioned, the RFP does contain some components that the council dictated be included in the ordinance, BL 2019-109. But it kind of goes beyond that as well. So you all can amend it to supplement what council dictated, as long as it's not inconsistent with what council dictated. Just the other thing, the other distinction that I might make that I don't know if would be helpful in context would be that this competitive solicitation is a separate thing from the regulation that the commission adopted to govern SUMDs, shared urban mobility devices. And those regulations do still stand in place. BL 2019-109 did specifically kind of reference and ratify those regulations that this commission previously adopted. So certainly the respondents to the solicitation are required to acknowledge that they will abide by the regulations adopted by the TLC, and that you all will be able to amend those regulations in the future, and that they will still need to follow those regulations as amended. So just, it may be a little confusing, but we do kind of have those two separate frameworks out there. That there is the regulations, which are kind of freestanding. They're pursuant to authority delegated by the council to the commission to enact. And then the competitive solicitation is the process that the council asked us to use to determine determine which companies should receive certificates of public necessity and convenience to be able to operate fleets of SUMDs, a SUMD system. And so that is the purpose of this solicitation that you're now being asked to review and either approve or amend.
And I would add, there will be some additional work for the commission. As Ms. Costonis mentioned, rules, regulations, fees, and so forth are still, the ordinance actually spelled out several things that we're going to have to do, but that's a different meeting at a different time.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Powell.
In the document, it says all inquiries must be submitted by Tuesday, July 21st, 2020 at 4:30. And that obviously hasn't taken place yet. That, next week or maybe the week after. I don't have a calendar in front of me. So how are we able to make a decision on this if the inquiries aren't due until the end of next week?
The inquiries are actually for the vendors. So they're inquiring based on what is published. And we're giving them time to submit questions after it's approved and amended by the commission.
Okay, I gotcha. Okay.
So if anyone would like to make any comment or have suggestions regarding amendments or anything, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Ms. Palmer has just raised her hand, so please go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I had a quick question, probably for Terry in relation to, or Teresa, in relation to what you said a minute ago about the regulations that are in place. To the extent that there are items in the RFP, as we've been given it today, that are inconsistent with those regulations that I believe you said are still in place, will the RFP be amended to reflect what's in the regulations, or do we need to do that today? Because I think the regulations are already, operative.
I would say that it would be good to bring those to our attention and talk about them today, because I don't know. So basically, it depends what it is, because the code provision, or rather the ordinance, BL 2019-109, that would kind of preempt both the regulations and the RFP. So if anything that the bill says, that will supersede. If there's an inconsistency between the bill and the regulation, then the language of the bill would supersede. And likewise, if there's an inconsistency between the RFP and the bill, then the bill would supersede. All our respondents, all our potential bidders are going to see is the RFP. And Terry usually does maybe a data room or some additional documents that they are given to access. So maybe I would assume that probably BL 2019-109 is among those. If a particular item is inconsistent with the regulations and not inconsistent with the bill, then I would say that we probably do need to amend the RFP to be consistent with the regulations. It would be good to just bring that to our attention in case that's something that we need to address today.
And this is Terry. I can confirm that the legislation is attached to the solicitation.
Ms. Palmer's hand is still raised. I can't tell if that's a new hand or the same one.
I'm not sure I know how to unraise my hand, but I'm also not sure I totally understood the answer, but I think I'll figure it out as we go along. So thank you. You can unraise my hand.
Well, I think what I gathered from Ms. Costonis, Ms. Palmer, is that if you do feel there are inconsistencies between the RFQ as prepared and what the commission passed as regulations for the SUVs to follow in the interim as well as post RFP process, then please raise those with us today so we can discuss those and so we can determine if the RFQ needs to be amended in some degree.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak regarding the RFQ? Mr. McNally.
I was just going to say, if Ms. Palmer clicks on the hand again, it will unclick the hand, or it will take the hand down. So
I'm clicking on the hand and it's not coming down. Leave it to my technology here. Sorry about that.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Rogers had actually sent some questions to Ms. Costonis and I about the process. Well, not necessarily the process, but the RFP itself. I'm not sure what makes the most sense, but I think they're obviously appropriate questions. I could share them with the commissioner. He could, but they're just basic questions that he'd like to pose to the commission and to Metro Legal and to all of us for that.
All right.
The first question he had was, what ability will the city have to ensure ADA compliance from the company?
Do you want me to answer that?
Well, if you want to, I think from a legal standpoint, you could say what our options are if we find that they are not in compliance.
So there are, again, the answer kind of depends on where we are. We do have the code provision, Chapter 1262, and the regulations in place right now. So those are enforceable, at the current time as to anyone currently operating. And I should perhaps have said that the bill 2019-109 did continue what the prior bill 2019-1658 had done, which was to allow all of the operators currently in place as of July 1, 2019, they were allowed to continue to operate so long as they cut their fleets in half, allowing a fleet size of 50% of the permits that existed on that date. So we do have some Ds currently operating in Metro Nashville, and they are currently governed by Chapter 1262 of the Metro Code and by the regulations previously adopted by this TLC commission. So those are enforceable, just like any other code provision or regulations would be enforceable either as a violation of the Metro Code, enforceable in environmental court, or by citation, or because they are certificate holders, they can be brought before the TLC for a disciplinary matter to have their certificate revoked or suspended, just like any of our other permittees or certificate holders can be in any of the other contexts that the TLC regulates. The existing regulations do require compliance with various different provisions that are designed to try to ensure that the sidewalks will be clear as the ADA requires. And I think it's maybe not so much one particular regulation, it's kind of a framework of regulations that try to achieve that effect. But they would all be enforceable. And I believe that because that is kind of a moving target, I guess, that what the RFP strives to do is also to achieve compliance in that context. And so it asks the bidders to kind of tell us like how they would propose to achieve that compliance. So once the RFP is awarded, the one or more awardees would also, based on what they've submitted, essentially contract with the metropolitan government to fulfill the conditions that they proposed in their bid. So then we would also have, it's possible in those bids that they would actually propose to go above and beyond what our regulations require if they are interested enough in being the winner of the solicitation, or there can be multiple winners. Then they can try to outbid their competitors by offering to go above and beyond those minimum requirements. So in that context, we might be able to to kind of get a contractual provision that basically we would be issuing a certificate to that certificate holder conditioned on their fulfilling the conditions of their bid, which again could go a little above and beyond the minimum requirements. So I think there are multiple different ways in which there are efforts to achieve ADA compliance and to enforce that. Does that answer your question, Mr. Rogers?
Yeah, it does, because especially the part about going above and beyond just what the minimum requirements are. Because I've talked to folks in the disability community, and obviously we've heard from them before. And, you know, I want us to be willing to enforce not just the regulations, you know, the letter of the law, but go beyond that. So I hope they all promise that in their bid application.
I think obviously ADA issues are very serious to us. If we take them very seriously, we were, I think it's already been clear in our initial venture into SUMDs, and certainly as we continue. Mr. Rogers has about 4 or 5 more questions, 5 or 6 more questions. The RFP states that we choose a maximum of 3 companies. However, the provision was repealed by BL 2019-109. Doesn't the commission have authority to choose more than 3 contractors? I think that's Ms. Castones.
I think the answer to that question is yes. Hang on just a second. Let me get into BL 2019-109 again. So BL 2019-109, as originally proposed, didn't have any language about a cap at all, which was a contrast to the prior ordinance, which was 2019-1658, which did have a cap of 3. So there was an amendment that was offered to BL 2019-109. It did add the option of putting a cap on operators, but made it permissive rather than mandatory. You know, in terms of just the strict language of the bill itself, you can put a cap on it, but you don't have to. Legal has had some discussions, I think, in the context of this commission, and there have also been some discussions in the context of the various different council meetings and committee meetings at which this issue has been discussed with regard to some concerns about the possibility that limiting the number of awardees could potentially be a monopoly issue. I would say that we do continue to have some concerns about that. And so if you were to want to amend the RFP to eliminate that cap of 3, that would certainly be legally supportable and potentially even recommended.
Okay, does that mean I need to make a formal motion to change the RFP?
Yes, sir. The TLC does not do anything unless it is by motion that passes by a majority of a quorum at an open meeting.
Oh, okay. So I need to do that now or later?
I mean, I think we could either do individual motions for individual amendments, or kind of save them up and do one big motion with all the changes. It's at your at the commission's preference.
Okay, I had a couple of other, well, more than 2 questions. So if Billy could just keep going through those, maybe come back to me later and I'll make a motion.
All right. Will Metro hire additional staff to monitor and regulate, monitor and regulate these contracts? If so, will they be funded by sufficient fees on contract?
You want me to speak to that too, Billy?
I think I can. Our recommendation will be to hire, our recommendation will be to have sufficient funds to hire an appropriate amount of staff, and we will be looking, working and looking to the Transportation Licensing Commission to help us answer that question, but also it'll be your responsibility to set the fee.
That's correct. And I would just add that the fee setting responsibility comes under the TLC's regulatory authority. So your ability to make rules to govern SMD fleets and is not necessarily a part of this RFP approval.
Correct. So I think the answer is our intention will be to, yeah. Will complaints against contractors require the same kind of administrative procedures we currently use, such as requiring an appearance by the complainant?
So once someone is a certificate holder, the TLC will have the same kind of disciplinary jurisdiction over them that you would over any of your permittees or certificate holders. So you can notice them to a meeting to be subject to discipline, where we would have like a little due process hearing like we have done with many other types of permittees in the past. Give them give the complainant an opportunity to state the case, give them an opportunity to state the case, and then the TLC kind of decide if there was a violation, and if so, what discipline would be applicable to that violation, such as a suspension or revocation of their certificate.
The second part of my question, though, was will the person making the complaint have to appear at the meeting?
So I think it would depend if it's a third-party complainant or if it's one of our inspectors. Either way, I think it would probably be best to have them appear.
Okay.
And Ms. Powell, you've got your hand raised. Did you want to add something?
Yes, I had a question about the RFP, but actually the current conversation sparked a question. So if they're going, I know that in theory, the scooters are going to be used as a mode of transportation for, well, not in theory, in actuality, a mode of transportation for both Nashville residents and people who are visiting the city. But I guess from my perspective, especially where they're going to be located downtown, that's a pretty tourist-heavy area. And so with that said, if a complainant is going to be required to appear before us in order for us to hear their complaint, I guess my concern would be that they file a complaint and then they go home and they're not able to appear before us because they're no longer in the city. So can we have it so that they can call in if they're not from the city of Nashville? Or I guess I'm interested in hearing the thoughts of others regarding what I'm saying, and if need be, if you guys feel like that's something that we should address.
In terms of hearings, we have in the past and will continue to, for somebody that's out of town, to either do audio conferencing or video conferencing. In fact, we're probably going to be better at the video conferencing than we've ever been before. So if there's a complaint and it's a valid complaint that needs to come to the commission, then absolutely we would be able to have that person either present, yes, or by calling, one way or the other. So no worries there.
Okay, that sounds good. I don't know if Freddie, did you have something to say about this in particular? You have your hand raised.
No, I think Billy answered it. I was just going to say we already have mandates or things in place, I believe, and we have used them in the past. Video conferencing, teleconferencing. We have reset meetings for when people with taxi cab complaints are actually wanted to appear. So I think and I don't know if this has to be specific to the RFP, but I believe there are things that are already in place to allow them, especially with the COVID epidemic. I'm pretty sure that video conferencing and teleconferencing would be allowed.
And we'll be able to move that forward. Don't worry about that. If they need a hearing, we'll find a way for them to have a hearing.
Okay. All right. That sounds good to me.
And I wanted to add, in case I had confused things by leaving this out earlier, that there are also a couple of provisions for penalties, like financial penalties, like fees of $25 or $50 that the regulations provide for can be implemented against the scooter companies for certain types of violations. Citation either by police officers or inspectors. If they don't appeal those, if they just pay them, then it would never need to come before either this commission or a court. So those may happen as well.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'll continue to ask 2 questions left. The RFP states that Metro has an interest in bringing bicycles. Will a bidder offering bikes as a part or all of their fleet receive extra credit?
Billy, do you want me to speak to the evaluation process?
I think so.
Okay. This is Terry. So we have a slew of list of questions that we're asking the offers to respond to. And, they're not going to receive extra credit. Someone may, the evaluation committee comes up with a consensus score and discusses. And if that is something that the evaluation committee is seeking as a plus, it very well may be a plus for one organization and not necessarily a weakness, but it may, necessarily impact the overall consensus score of that section. Does that answer your question?
Could I add something to that, Terry?
Sure, Michelle.
Yeah, I think that we want to be very cautious that we are evaluating the offers against the evaluation criteria that's been set forth and the scope of service that's been established in the solicitation. If there is any one approach that is of particular interest and I don't want to say concern, but a particular, whereas the commission would consider that it should receive additional consideration more so than another, then we need to express that to all of the offers. We need to disclose all of that information to the potential offers. So we cannot be about the business of moving the goal line once the players have already begun. Everybody needs to go into it understanding exactly, what we're looking for. And if there is a particular approach that is of more interest, then we need to say that and let them propose that solution to us and then evaluate them accordingly.
So from my layman terms, if the commission's view is that bikes are very important and that's a critical part, or you think it's worthy of extra consideration, the commission should ask that be a part of the RFP. Is that a safe way to put it?
I don't know if bikes are the only option, but if there are some other shared urban, mobility devices beyond the standard, I think you would say that you are particularly interested in proposed solutions to include those. And then where you get offers that do that, then you would evaluate them accordingly. I think everybody immediately thinks about the SUMDs as being these scooters. But if you're saying we're particularly interested in alternative device types, then you need to spell that out in the solicitation. And then as your responses come in, if there are offers that have some solutions that include that, then you should score it accordingly. But you can't give somebody else more credit because they offered that solution when you didn't make clear to all the offers that you were interested in that and that they could also do the same.
Thank you.
Introducing or into this what proposed device.
Terry, we missed you, I think, on that.
The solicitation Metro is interested in seeing more bikes into the city. What is your proposed fleet mix by device type?
I can read that language if Terry's having trouble being heard. But it is in the RFP now. It says Metro Nashville is interested in introducing more e-bikes into the city. What is your proposed fleet mix by device type? There is already a question in the RFP for proposers to respond to on that point. But,
so that would be the opportunity for the proposers, the vendors, to say, we think X, Y, Z, and they put in, we propose this, and this, and then from an evaluation standpoint, they would evaluate that as according. Okay.
Yeah, I think the evaluation criteria is what Michelle was saying. They need to be adjusted to address if the commission wants to call that out as a especially important component of the award.
All right, well then there's one last question, and then
hang on, Mr. Fields. Mr. Fields, Mr. McNally also has his hand raised. Go ahead, Mr. McNally.
Thank you. I attended a symposium that was held by some of the MUDs a while back, and there was quite a coalition between bike organizations and the shared mobile urban devices. And if I remember correctly, a representative Walk Bike Nashville appeared during one of our hearings to talk about support for these devices because they were promoting bike lanes. And I would be interested in some specific language asking how persons who are bidding, what positive impact they could have on bicycles or bike transportation, e-bikes as well as regular bicycles. But that's my my thoughts.
So the RFP language does it is more kind of expansive than that. It does say provide company multimodal plan to include at a minimum the following: the plan to promote SUMDs as first and last mile connections to transit. Metro Nashville is interested in introducing more e-bikes into the city. What is your proposed fleet mix by device type? How will you support Nashville's goal of shifting people away from driving, especially driving alone? How will you support overall multimodal policies and infrastructure, including identifying existing gaps? So it goes on a little bit about that. So that kind of concept is at least already kind of in the RFP.
Mr. Rogers, did you have a question or anything to add?
Yeah, I want to make, I agree with what Pat said, but I want to make it clear that anybody who would bring bikes gets extra credit, not necessarily extra, I don't want to set a number, but to say something like, your proposal would be considered more responsive if bikes are part of your fleet. So I don't know what other people think about that, but think about it, and at some point I'll make a motion to that effect.
I want to add something as well. When I was reviewing the RFQ, and I think there's already some language in the RFQ in regards to kind of aspirational goals and qualities that we're looking for potential vendors. And that is this idea that SUMDs are going to better affect change for this first mile, last mile ability for workers and commuters to get from point A to point B using other transportation modes. And I think right now, during the pilot program, the idea of the first mile, last mile never, at least from an observational standpoint, did not come to fruition. You did not see commuters or riders riding with helmets going from point A to point B to get where they needed to go. It was primarily the riders were tourists and people out, for entertainment purposes, which is fine too. But I know that I know a large concern, and I can already tell from the RFQ, is that we do want the SUMDs to address that area, and I would like to make sure that process is that is included, and maybe it needs to be even more explicit. We've had some discussions. I honestly can't remember off the top of my head what types of requirements we have for a more even distribution of SUMDs across the city, whether or not that is desirable. Certainly, from the standpoint of our discussion about bikes and bike lanes and whatnot, it would seem that that issue needs to be on the table too.
There was only one last question from Mr. Rogers. I'll give that to you. There have been several changes in this industry with companies leaving and combining. If we choose a certain number of companies and one or two leave, will we be able to replace them with another contractor? And I think the answer is once you're past the RFP process, that process comes back to the commission for decisions and action. Is that accurate, Ms. Pistones?
Hang on, let me pull up the sorry, I want to look at the bill. Excuse me for a minute while I scan. I mean, it does give the TLC still the general authority to adopt regulations. I believe in our regulations, though, we may have somewhat deferred to the RFP. So that may be something that we need to amend in the regulations going forward.
Hey, Terry, and speaking in reference to that, if a company is merged with or bought out from another company, would that not be an assignment?
I assume that it would be, which in some other contexts, but I think the question is, do we have to do an RFP every time, we have one of our existing certificate holders go out of business or something or be replaced. And we have others looking to enter the market. And I think that would be up to the TLC.
That was my impression as I read the ordinances. Again, once the process is over, it would depend on even on fleet expansion and things like that. So, but we agree. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, those were the only questions that I've had from any of the commission.
All right. Well, none of the commissioners were required to submit questions ahead or in advance of the meeting. So if anyone else has any other matters that they would like to address, having reviewed the RFQ, please, let's talk about those right now on the call. Ms. Palmer?
Yeah, along the same lines of what Commissioner Rogers said, I also noticed that the RFP talks about up to 3 operators. And I know that I was in a meeting, probably the last large meeting I was in downtown at the Downtown Partnership, where a lot of people were present, and we had discussed that we were not going to limit, the number of operators in the RFP. So I think Mr. Rogers and I are on the same page on that. Likewise, the bill, as I recall, gave the TLC, or stated that the TLC shall initially allow each selected operator a maximum of 500 in the fleet. RFP provides for an initial fleet of 500. So I think that is an area that needs to be revised right away. At least in my opinion, we can talk about it, but I don't think that we are intending to initially set everybody out on the street with 500. It's a maximum of 500. And of course we can, raise that number whenever we deem necessary or when requested, if the circumstances are right.
I'm sorry, was that a question for me?
Well, that was really a point of discussion for everybody. I think that's one of the main things that, along with Mr. Rogers' statement about the number of operators being incorrect, I think the fleet size is not necessarily in the RFP what we want it to say, and it's not consistent with the bill, and it's not consistent with our regulations.
Your regulations are deemed by the bill to be still valid and in effect. And so the provisions in the regulations for increasing fleet size would be among those. But it does say that, I think that you correctly quoted the language of the bill. The initial fleet size would be a maximum of 500. So that means we could start out with a lower number. We could amend the RFP to start out with a lower number.
Correct, and that's what I'm raising as a point of discussion for the other commissioners. And a potential motion. I don't know if are we going to wait till 5 o'clock to make all of our motions, or do we do them piece by piece, or how are we going to do that?
That is up to you all. Like I said, you could do it piecemeal, like each amendment a motion, or you could do it like one large collective motion, or, I guess you could do several different motions, each of which has kind of 2 or 3 amendments encompassed within it. All of those would be fine from my perspective.
I'm sorry, I'm actually asking my fellow commissioners that question.
I think that's a fair question, Ms. Palmer. I think, my hesitancy in having piecemeal motions is I'd like to know what are all the issues are, what the issues are, and get them out on the table, because they may affect one another. And, I've heard a couple of things already that I wanted to run to ground. But, there may be other issues as well that that commissioners want to raise. You and Mr. Rogers have talked about making it clear that we're not limiting the number of operators to just 3. I would like a little more further discussion on that. I thought the whole purpose of this RFQ process was to winnow down the number of operators, perhaps give them ultimately more of a share of the SUMDs in the Nashville market, but that we would have fewer operators, greater accountability and whatnot. And so I'm perplexed about just having an unlimited number. Mr. Rogers?
Yeah, generally I agree. I just don't want to be limited to 3. I'm not sure I want more than 3. But if there's something about, the 4th rated contractor that I like, I'd like to be able to at least propose that we go to 4, for instance. But I think at one time we were up to 7, and 7 is definitely too many. So I don't think there's a perfect number, but it's not necessarily 3. So that's where I'm at on that issue.
Ms. Palmer, you had your hand raised as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I agree as well with you on that. I agree that was our goal, to try to kind of bring in the best and the brightest, if you will. And but my concern was that I was at a meeting where several people from Metro government were in there saying that they didn't want it. It was not going to be that way in the RFP. So now I get the RFP and it says that, and I'm just confused. I'm just raising the question because I'm confused as to what Ms. Pistonis and everybody else is, recommending in that regard.
I mean, I can speak to that a little bit from a procedural perspective. So BL 2019-109, as originally filed, did not have any cap in it. In its initial draft, kind of a late filed amendment to it did add a little bit of language that made it permissive. It says the MTLC shall be further authorized to establish and impose a limit upon the number of permitted operators to the extent allowed by law, provided such limitation is deemed to be within the public interest. So it kind of added an option that is not mandatory, but that is permissive upon the TLC to put a limit on the number of operators, but you don't have to. But yes, there may have been discussions early on with the previous version of 109 where they talked about how it had no such reference to a cap or limit on operators, and that was changed kind of by the amendment that was filed to that bill, maybe like a couple of days before it actually passed.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have any other issues they want to put on the table? Ms. Palmer?
Okay, yeah, I wanted to ask a question about, let's see, one of the other issues that I see in the RFP relates to, I'm looking for the provision right now, had to deal with, it had to do with the applicant's ability to, I can't find the exact language, but you'll know what I mean when I say it. It had to do with the applicant's ability to ensure that a driver or an operator of one of the scooters was not operating under the influence of alcohol, and it gave some time frames in there. And the time frames that are in there are inconsistent with the time frames that we enacted in our regulations, which was operation prohibited after 9 p.m. before 5 a.m. And the RFP specifically contains language about operating after 10 p.m. on weekdays and 11 p.m. on weekends. So that's an issue that I flagged right away that needs to be amended, in my opinion.
Yeah, I saw that too, Ms. Palmer.
Okay. And I have one other one if you're ready.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is more for Mr. Fields and Ms. Casonis. We've had some lengthy discussions over the months about the violations that we've seen and documented and that have continued throughout the various iterations of the bill and the various iterations of the regulations. And what we have said all along is, we're going to be taking a look at this when the time comes to select companies that are going to be awarded the certificates. So my question is, how are those being considered? Do we have that data? Is that data going to be provided to the committee that's going to be selecting the operators who get the permits? Because I mean, the violations are still, you know, I mean, they're every day. They were last night. They were the night before. So I'm just wondering how that's going to play into the process, because I don't recall seeing that in here, and I may have missed it.
I'm not sure I know how to answer that. I certainly could talk about the complaints that we've received and you know, compliance issues that have been raised in terms of an evaluation process. I can't say how that factors into the RFP.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear who just spoke.
That was Miss Ray. She's having audio problems, it looks like.
Yeah, and it looks like she switched just to audio, so hopefully that will improve.
Okay, Terry's said that she's having some connection issues. She's still trying to work through it.
All right. Any other issues that the commissioners would like to put on the table? All right, well then at this time, I guess we should start entertaining motions with regard to any amendments that the commissioners would like added explicitly to the RFQ or to clarify the RFQ in any way. Mr. Rogers, you had a number of questions, and Ms. Palmer, of course, you had a number of questions as well. I don't want to put you guys on the spot, but if you have any motions that you'd like the commission to consider, please go ahead.
Yeah, the things we talked about, I'd like the RFQ to make it clear that there's no set limit on the number of contractors, but that's a decision to be made by the commission. And additionally, I would like some kind of language that says we're not only interested in bikes, but that will give some kind, no set amount, but that a response that had bikes in its fleet would be considered more responsive to the request. I mean, I don't want to quantify it in any way, but I would want it to be made clear. You know, if we have one company that has 500 scooters and another one that says 500 bicycles, I want the one that has the bicycles to be treated better. However, I put that into a motion. That's what I want.
Is there a second regarding the motion? Ms. Costonis wants to add something. Go ahead, Ms. Costonis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I felt like I thought we should maybe clarify a little bit in terms of the evaluation and award process. The commission itself can only meet in an open meeting context. And that is not kind of consistent with best practices or really with the law in terms of competitive procurement, which generally anticipates that pre-award would be confidential. The way, as I understand it, and Mr. Fields can correct me, but the commission delegated that process to the purchasing agent. So we would be following the usual purchasing agent process of the purchasing agent appointing an evaluation committee. And the evaluation committee would then make a recommendation to the purchasing agent who would make the initial award. The award would be made before the commission would have the opportunity to once again weigh in on this matter, just because it is only at that post-award stage, that the documents again become public and there can be kind of public discussion of it. So I don't know if Michelle wants to speak to that a little bit, or if Billy wants to add anything. But I just wanted to kind of correct any assumption that the commission would be able to do the evaluation, because that's just inconsistent with your process. You have to meet publicly, and that is really supposed to be done confidentially.
That's one of the issues that we had going into this. The Metro Council asked us to do something that we normally don't do, so we were trying to make sure we're following all of our processes, but we also have to follow the procurement processes, which is why you very wisely asked the procurement department to weigh in and to manage this for us. So your real role is to, I think, is to describe what you would like to see in the next, in any company that will come to operate, and then through the evaluation process, they would give that back to. With luck, it would come back the way you wanted it. But if there are certain things that you want to be very clear in what you see as important, that I think the motion that Mr. Rogers made, that you remove the number 3 from the RFQ, that you also the commission believes that a vendor would be positively viewed if e-bikes are a major part of. In other words, you're very interested in see what a vendor would propose for e-bikes and through the processes of travel and transportation in the metro government. Jerry, does that sound about right?
Yes. Yeah, that's what I wanted. I guess the way to put it is, if 2 contractors have the exact same score and one has bicycles, I'd prefer the one with bikes get the advantage. All things being equal, I guess.
I want to apologize. I had some technical difficulties with my laptop, so I was absent for a couple of minutes there. But based on the context of where we are, I do not believe I missed anything. Sounds like y'all been discussing the procedural process with regard to Mr. Rogers' motion about no limit on the number of companies that we might be able to approve, and to come up with some way to favor companies with an application that incorporated e-bikes in their proposal. I've got Mr. McNally also waiting patiently with his hand raised.
From what I see on pages 5 and 6 of the proposal, there is an evaluation process, and then it says approach 60 points. I'm assuming that we're going to weigh the responses to this approach that's identified and give a bidder 0 to 60 points based on that. Carrie, I'm looking on page 6, and I do see where it says Metro Nashville is interested in introducing more e-bikes. I would like to include, I don't know whether you call them non-e-bikes or just bikes, pedal bikes in the city, and what is your proposal? The way this is written right now, does it not already give more weight to someone who might have a positive response to that particular question?
May I be recognized?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm so sorry that I've been looking all over this side panel to understand how to raise my hand. And I think because I'm not a commission member, there's no way for me to do it. But I think Mr. McNally is correct, and in so much as the solicitation already has a provision for that. Any offers that come in that do not include some variation of e-bikes in their solution would be so evaluated accordingly, which would suggest that they may not, they would be, I want to be cautious about how much we're saying about this evaluation process in this open meeting, but that they would be evaluated accordingly. So I think you are correct that there is already a provision in the solicitation requesting that offers provide a solution that includes that.
May I add something as well?
Go ahead.
It includes e-bikes, but I think what Commissioner Rogers and myself are and maybe the other commissioners are very interested in is pedal bikes, as well as, and what I heard during some of the public comments earlier in other meetings was that some of these companies actually promote bike lanes, which promotes, again, the city's policy in favor of alternative transportation. I'd heard some people talking about how the companies actually were promoting bike lanes because that made the scooters safer to use. So while it says here Metro Nashville is interested in introducing more e-bikes, I would want to include, we're interested in introducing more pedal bikes, bike lanes, and other components that enhance or improve bike transportation in the community. And again, I would want to make sure it was very clear that a bidder would get more points if they had a good response to that particular request. Hope I made sense what I was trying to say.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, it appears that I think you can amend it easily just to add the language that you discussed as far as go to the e-bikes and bikes, as well as the issues you had on, and the promotion of bike lanes. Again, I'm not sure on the evaluation process. I have to go back to procurement and legal. I don't have the answers on the benefits, but clearly what I think we think the RFP says is that vendors are expected to propose e-bikes and e-bike solutions.
What exactly, Mr. Fields, is an e-bike? What definition are we using? Are we talking about bikes that are simply bicycles, but that you have a credit card system like a SUMD, and that makes them an e-bike, or is it electric motored?
It would be an electric motored bicycle versus a regular bike. Like the B-cycles we have in Nashville are what we're talking about in terms of, so a company could propose e-bikes, and if it were amended to say and bikes, they could have that as a part of the process as well. So e-bikes would be electric bicycles, and they have a definition in state law. So again, I think you can go. I think you're in a place where you can do amendments or make motions regarding the RFQ, adding language, adding a simple sentence in that particular part. I'm beginning to look at procurement. Is that what you would want from the commission, Terry or Michelle?
This is Terry. Whatever recommendation they're wanting to make to what is currently published, whether it's adding a sentence, adding a word, whatever it is what we're seeking.
Okay.
All right. Well, then at this time, Mr. Rogers, you've got your hand raised again. Did you want to add anything before we move forward with your motion?
No, I was just going to agree with what Commissioner McNally said. And Billy mentioned that the definition of e-bikes is in state law. So that clearly says what is and isn't. And I think all the operators know that. They know what the law is and what they do. I might also mention that hopefully, I don't know that this matters. Some of these companies are developing scooters with 3 wheels. And I know at least one of them has a sit-down scooter. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if any of that will be offered, when they make proposals or not. But I guess we need to remain flexible about what may be proposed.
All right. So if I understand correctly, then, Mr. Rogers, you're wanting to amend your motion to make sure that we include just normal pedal bikes.
Yes.
In addition to e-bikes, and that we're interested in hearing proposals that include e-bikes and regular pedal bikes.
Yes, I am.
All right, is there a second regarding Mr. Rogers' motion? Mr. McNally?
I would second that motion.
All right, we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. Mr. Carr? Mr. Carr, you're muted, so if you're speaking, I can't hear anything.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Are you asking me to second the motion?
No, this is a roll call vote in favor or against.
In favor.
All right, Ms. Powell?
Ms. Powell may have had to leave. She had an appointment at 3. She may be off the call.
Okay, it shows that she's still on, but I'm not, I'll skip her and come back.
No, I'm sorry. I stayed on because we were voting, and I'm for.
All right, Ms. Warren?
For.
Mr. McNally?
A.
Ms. Palmer?
Aye.
And Mr. Rogers?
I vote aye.
Motion passes. And that was with regard to making it clear in the RFQ that we were not limited to only awarding to 3 companies, and that we were encouraging the applicants to present proposals that included e-bikes and bikes. Are there any other issues that we want to make a motion in regards to amending the RFQ? Ms. Palmer?
Yeah, again, I'm not sure how we need to the language that it needs to say, but I want it to be clear that we are not necessarily going to put an initial fleet of 500 for each operator that's approved. Meaning, the legislation said that we could put up to 500. So I'm not sure how important it is that the RFP says 500 as opposed to up to 500. So I guess that's a question. But if it needs to be said, then that's my motion, that we say up to 500. Does that make sense?
Yes. Mr. Rogers, you got your hand raised.
I'll second that motion.
All right, I'll go ahead and take a roll call vote. Ms. Powell, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here. I'm trying to hang on. Sorry. Yes, aye.
All right, and Ms. Warren?
Aye.
Mr. McNally?
Aye.
Ms. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Motion passes. I believe there was another issue that you raised, Ms. Palmer, in regard to an inconsistency about the nighttime hours of operation, when they were to end and when they were to begin the following morning.
That is correct. And I'm trying to find the language. Gosh, this print is so tiny, y'all. I don't know how they expect us to read this with my old eyes. There is, if I can just find this section, I don't know if it's under approach or. You might have to bear with me till I find it. I'm sorry. I apologize.
I think I see it on scope details at the top of page 5.
Top of page 5.
K.
I don't even have page numbers. I'm sorry.
K says the selected operators will use technology in the most extensive, creative, reliable, and effective ways to limit operation of some Ds while impaired, especially after 10 p.m. on weekdays and after 11 p.m. on weekends and holidays.
Yeah, so I guess my motion would be, well, my question would be, do we need to just take the times out of there, out of that particular section, because we want them to be keeping people from driving DUI at all times. But do we need to put something in there that, I'm still trying to find the language, I'm sorry. What if we just removed the, the time period there and just said,
so it would just read, the selected operators will use technology in the most extensive, creative, reliable, and effective ways to limit operations of some Ds while impaired, period?
Yeah, I'm still trying to find the language, so thank you for reading it again, yes.
So your motion will be just to remove the time period and basically require them to use technology to deal with any sort of impaired operation.
That's right. It would be helpful. Is there a citation in the RFQ that can be provided so we can include that in the motion so it's crystal clear what we're taking out to procurement?
I think that's in section 1.3 requirement under scope details, and it's item number K, letter K.
Yeah, it's underneath operational information and requirements. May I speak?
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry, please.
Ms. Costonas, can you tell me if there is any restriction on the time that they must operate in general? But if so, that solicitation needs to state in a separate a time restriction.
I actually don't think that it does, because the regulations do state it very clearly, and the bill does state that the regulations are still good and effective. And then the RFP says that the respondents have to understand and acknowledge the regulations apply. The regulations provide that there can be no operation after 9 p.m. and prior to 5 a.m.
Okay, it just, as long as we've got it where it says they must do it in accordance with the regulations, so I'm okay with that.
Are the regulations provided to the potential bidders as well in like the data room or attachments?
Let me scroll down and look. Yes, they are.
Okay.
Mr. McNally, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to, for clarification, I find that particular section that we were dealing with on page 2 under operation information and requirements, subsection capital K, about the selected operators will use technology in the most extensive, creative, et cetera, especially after 10 p.m. on weekdays and after 11 p.m. on weekends and holidays. And that's page 2 of mine. So, I have a magnifying glass. So,
Oh, that's very helpful.
So, Ms. Palmer, it sounds like if you would, in your motion, just reference the second page of the RFQ under Operating Information and Requirements, Section K, that you wish to delete all the verbiage after while impaired, since they're not even going to allow to operate during those hours that are listed there anyway.
Yes, sir, I will. Okay. Thank you for pointing me to the right place. So my motion will be to eliminate language under Operating Information and Requirements, letter K. K as in Catherine. To eliminate all language after the word impaired, so that it will read, the selected operators will use technology in the most extensive, creative, reliable, and effective ways to limit opposition of SUMDs while impaired, period.
Mr. McNally, go ahead.
I'll second that motion.
All right, I'll go ahead and take a roll call vote. Mr. Rogers?
Yes, aye.
Ms. Warren?
Aye.
Mr. McNally?
Aye.
And Ms. Palmer?
Aye.
And Ms. Powell and Mr. Carr have left the meeting, so motion passes. Are there any other issues that the commissioners would like to raise? Mr. Rogers.
I just had a question for the procurement folks. How is this advertised? I mean, these companies are all over the country and all over the world. And as far as I'm concerned, the more the merrier. So how, have we made any effort to contact companies, especially ones that aren't here now?
So notification is sent out through the system that is available for registered vendors that are registered underneath the commodity codes. They were sent out. So basically, I think I brought in 3 different commodity codes when this was developed to bring in as many people that were already registered. And they get a system notification. It's also published out onto our website. And many times we have bidding companies out there that are grabbing solicitations and posting information on their website as well. Just so they're spreading information. They're like plan holders and they're getting information out to other vendors. If there is a particular company that you feel that may be interested in participating, we would love to have their information so we can contact them to get them registered so they can participate. I've had, since it's been published, I've had 2 additional companies that have gotten registered.
Somewhere I have the website for about 20 companies. Could I just send you that information? Would that be?
If you wish to send that to Mr. Fields, he can forward that on to me.
Okay, I'll do that then. Sure.
Okay, sure.
Ms. Warren, you also have your hand raised.
Yeah, I did have a question under the affidavits portion of the RFQ, where it has the client affirms that by its employment policy standards and practices. I notice it doesn't mention religion, gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, which I believe is in Metro's code, or Metro's statement of non-discrimination. Does that need to be in there? I'm not sure if that's Teresa or Terry.
I'm going to defer to Michelle in reference to Michelle and Teresa in reference to the affidavits.
So I want to make sure that I'm clear on the question, Ms. Warren, if you don't mind.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself again. Where it says, well, demotion, employment, dismissal, or laying off of any individual due to race, creed, color, national origin, age, or sex. I noticed it did not mention religion, gender identity, gender expression or sexual orientation, which it does mention in Metro Statement of Non-Discrimination. I know it's
Okay.
listed in there as well, or is that covered under the bill?
Yeah, I do think that on religion, I certainly defer to the law department on that because I know that it's in the non-discrimination statement, but I'm not clear on the legal position as it relates to employment practices. I do believe in light of recent developments at the Supreme Court related to the other protected groups that you noted, I think it is worth us considering a modification to the protected groups that are listed in that affidavit to reflect that recent legal change, but certainly would run any proposed language, as we do with all of the affidavits, to the law department for consideration.
Hang on, I am looking in the Metro Code. It appears that section of the RFQ references a section of the Metro Code, so I'm trying to pull that up while we're talking. I'm assuming that the wording of the RFQ kind of mirrors the wording of the code provision.
That's like standard section, Terry.
Right, exactly. And it does say in the code, the Metro Code, section 428020, the dismissal or laying off of any individual due to race, creed, color, natural origin, age, sex, gender identity, or sexual orientation is what it says in 428020A of the Metropolitan Code. It may be the creed is intended to reference religion.
So we will make the modifications related to the other items that you noted that are referenced in the code, and we will wait to hear from the law department related to the specific call out of religion.
Thank you.
Mr. Rogers, I can't tell if your hand is raised anew or if that's just an old hand. Any other commissioners would like to bring any issues to the table? Ms. Palmer.
Yeah, I was wondering now that Ms. Ray's microphone is fixed, if she could comment on my prior question about the record of violations that we've had leading up to the RFP process, and if and how that's going to be included in the selection process.
So if we are not asking them or stating in the evaluation criteria that that is part of the consideration, then we can't take that in consideration of evaluating. We can have it as part of their experience to ask them to inform us how many, and then inform them that that would be, taken into consideration. And we can also, I can get with Michelle about how we can word it in reference to, verifying that information with Billy's office and making sure that what they're submitting is accurate. That would be part of it, taken into consideration as part of the scoring. But it has to be that in the evaluation criteria.
Okay, so then I would like to make a motion that the RFP be amended to reflect a criteria that be considered is each individual operator's record of compliance and record of violations leading up to the RFP process.
Do we have a second to Ms. Palmer's motion?
I'll second.
And that was a second by Mr. Rogers. I'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Warren?
Aye.
Mr. McNally?
I have a concern first before I vote, and that is if we have some people who have not who are new to Nashville and they don't have a record of compliance or lack of compliance being compared to people who have been here with a record of compliance or non-compliance. How is there going to be a evaluation of comparing those two different companies?
That's a great question.
Well, if I may,
Go ahead, Ms. Lane.
Feels like you can call me Hernandez Lane too. I think we're probably cousins, you know. I think that it's important for us to think about the experience and the violation. So I think that we would be looking at the whole scope of it, whether it's this market or any other market as well. I think that would be beneficial to us to consider. Also, you've got a variety of different evaluation criterion, and those evaluation criterion would be reviewed, or the responses to those would be reviewed by your evaluators. The aggregate of those scores would be, you know, how we would make a determination. So I guess what I'm getting to is that you're looking at the best value and the full scope of what those responses are. And, you know, a deficiency in one place and a robust score in another would be considered in total for all of them. So, you know, someone, unless there's something that is of particular interest and that you would consider to be a non-responsiveness kind of item, then you would see those evaluation criteria and the responses really weigh out in the full scope of the evaluation.
Ms. Costonis, go ahead.
Yes, I did notice in the RFQ that there is a reference to disciplinary action. It says I'm not sure how to tell exactly what section this is, but qualifications and experience continued. Respondents must identify any debarments for government contracts by any member, director, and direct of the proposed team members. Describe in detail any disciplinary action taken against your team in jurisdictions outside of Metro Nashville. So there is in experience already some reference to at least disciplinary action in other jurisdictions.
Okay, yeah, I saw that, but that's not, I mean, obviously I want it to include be clear that it includes a record of compliance in our, you know, county under our rules during the time period they've been operating thus far, so.
You can maybe amend that to just say in any jurisdictions in which you've operated in the past or something like that.
If the RFP does not already specify, Teresa, I think that a call out to Commissioner Palmer's point would be in order, because right now there's just an aggregate, you know, kind of consideration of violations. And if we want to include some particular interest in the Nashville jurisdiction, we should spell it out.
Procedurally, Robert's rules, I think where we are, we have a motion on the table. Ms. Palmer, do you want to amend your motion or withdraw your motion and amend it? Or do you want to move forward with it as it stands?
I can't say that I know exactly how I stated it, so I will restate it. See if everyone will sign on. The motion would be to add to the selection criteria a evaluation of each individual company's record of compliance to date in Davidson County.
And is there a second regarding that motion? Mr. McNally.
I'll second that motion.
All right, I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Rogers.
Yes.
Ms. Warren,
Aye.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
and Ms. Palmer.
Yes.
Motion passes. Are there any other issues that the commissioners would like to bring to the forefront in order to amend the RFQ? Ms. Palmer, go ahead.
Thank you. This is a question, I think, for Ms. Castonas. I recall vaguely some discussions we had about fees that we had to set for the operators to cover, the cost of, to cover Metro's costs with relation to operation, enforcement, et cetera. Is that something that we need to address today, or is that something that we need to address in future regulations?
So that would be something you need to address in future regulations. The council bill does delegate to the TLC the ability to set the fees, but that's more kind of under your regulatory authority to adopt rules than it is under this RFP.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rogers?
Yeah, to follow up on that, I assume that we can't just vote to hire staff. So I assume we can't do that. If we can't,
we have to go through the regular I didn't mean to interrupt. We'd have to go through the regular metropolitan process, but we certainly, in the conversations we had up until this point, I think the administration and the council have both been understanding we're going to need additional staff to do what they're asking us to do.
Okay. Well, I don't want to make a formal motion or anything, but personally, I'd like to make it clear. You pass it on to the mayor's office that that's what we want.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Castonas, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to add that as far as your rulemaking authority is concerned, you are required to do a public hearing prior to changing the rules. So that would be one where the public would have an opportunity to comment before the rule change could go into effect by motion.
Is that the rule you're referring to? Are you talking about the fees or to hire more staff?
Well, I was referring to the fees, but how I think it would work is that the cost of hiring additional staff, when that is determined, could then be a basis for a fee increase, so that you would get that information, kind of like how many staff members would be recommended, kind of like what the overall cost of that would be in terms of salary and benefits, and then maybe take that into consideration in setting a fee amount.
All right, thank you. Ms. Palmer, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, Ms. Ray mentioned something earlier about assignment. My question is, is there an anti-assignment provision in this, or how's that working?
This is Ms. Ray. We have standard assignment language, but they have to provide justification for the assignment for it to be approved for someone to transfer, to assume the responsibility of another agreement.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Would that come before us or before you? Before procurement?
It comes to procurement first. And then as part of our process, we develop a new agreement that basically we have an assignment consent letter, and they provide us justification that basically justifies it taking place. They can't just do it because they're wanting to do it. There has to be a reason for it, and it has to be justified, and it has to be approved by Metro. And if we develop a new agreement using the terms of this agreement.
May I be recognized?
Yes, Ms. Hernandez.
Yeah, I think that Terry has described for you our standard process. You know, as you can imagine, we have many situations where contractors have a need to assign the contract, and there is a provision in our contract that defines the process whereby they have to receive consent. Metro has to agree to that. I think that what I understand from Ms. Palmer, or what I'm intimating, is a desire to be able to determine whether or not, for the commission to be able to determine whether or not that assignment should be allowed. I don't think that there's anything that precludes us from specifying that we don't want to allow, or the conditions under which an assignment will be allowed. Typically what we see, I see you, Terry, I'm sorry, Custones. Typically what we see is there's been an acquisition, or there's been a merger, or something of that sort, and that business process is what usually leads to the assignment process that Ms. Ray was talking about. But if we need to modify that in some way specific to the solicitation, Ms. Custones can tell us if legally there's an issue with that. I don't think so.
So I do have an answer, I think, and this is just kind of a, because this is this unique situation where we're kind of doing this procurement in a kind of non-standard situation. We're not so much trying to procure like a vendor or supplier for Metro, but we do have it in this regulatory context where the TLC has a separate regulatory authority. So in your rules, it states a certificate shall not be transferred or sold unless approved by the MTLC. So I think this would be subject to that.
Okay.
So yes, I think they would have to come back before the commission before there could be a transfer of a certificate for public necessity and convenience to operate SMD system.
Okay, and then Terry, I may have stepped away for a moment when you were answering Mr. Rogers' question earlier. He asked about, let's say we select two, and one of them goes out of business. The process for getting another company kind of stepping into their shoes, that would be to come back. That would be to come to TLC and ask for a permit at that point. Is that right?
Yes, I mean, I think that same provision that a certificate shall not be transferred or sold unless approved by the MTLC speaks to that as well, that they could not just hand their certificate off to somebody else without coming back before the commission.
Okay.
You know, just from a legal perspective, the RFQ probably needs to reference that to the applicants so they're aware that if there is a change of control or a need to assign or merger, acquisition, that's sort of thing, that they are explicitly aware that they would need to come back before the commission to get these consent.
Ms. Ray did confirm earlier that these regulations are among the documents that are attached to the RFP for the review of the bidders.
Okay. Are there any other issues that the commissioners would like to address in regard to the RFQ? Ms. Palmer, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, another question I had was regarding the data. I want to say it was in subsection double E for the operator's ability to provide Metro with anonymized and aggregate location data sharing, et cetera. Is that, it doesn't say real-time data. Is that real-time data? And do we want to require our ability to have real-time data?
I can speak to that if I may be recognized.
Yes.
That was another kind of last minute amendment that was made to BL 2019-109. So the bill does actually eliminate the real-time data requirement that was previously the language for the data, and replaced it with this anonymized and aggregated data provision that would, obviously, if you're going to aggregate 5 trips, it would not be real time.
Wait, can you help me locate in the bill where that is? Do you know? Is this in 2019-109?
Yes, it's paragraph 17 of C. So it's kind of toward the end, right before D.
Okay, so that was the decision council made to not require real-time data.
Yes, it was.
Correct.
Okay, well, I guess that's the end of that one then. Okay, thank you.
Any other potential changes that the commissioners would like to discuss? Ms. Costonis, is that your hand again, or is that?
Just forgot to lower it, sorry.
Okay, well, if there are not additional issues that we would like to discuss, and I'm not seeing, oh, Ms. Palmer, go ahead.
I just wanted to kind of end my comments by saying that to Ms. Ray and Ms. Lane, I think this is a really good job, and it really does kind of encapsulate very well all of our concerns and the issues that we faced over all these many months. I really appreciate all of the work that you all have done on this, and I know it's been significant. So I just wanted to say thank you for that, and I think it's a great product.
Yes, I would like to add to Ms. Palmer's comments, just on behalf of the whole commission. We really do appreciate what the procurement office has done here. It's made this a lot easier for us to handle and digest in terms of coming up with a process that will work better than the pilot program worked, and also it has streamlined our process in terms of coming up with a mechanism to just roll out a formal program. So thank you. At this time, we'll go ahead and wrap up that item on our agenda. We do not have any other items on our agenda for the meeting today.
No, sir, you can't have anything. That's your only agenda item that you can discuss.
So at this point, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Mr. Fields has told me that we do not have to have a vote on adjourning. I do have a question, Mr. Fields, and that is with regard to our regularly scheduled meeting that we have on the 4th Thursday of every month. Are we not having a meeting this month because we do not have anything on the agenda?
Correct. No agenda item.
Right. So everyone, this acts as our meeting for the month. Thank you for your volunteerism here. And we'll see everybody in August. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and sign off.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.